And hello to your new favorite podcast. My name is Raymond, and this is Josh Zolan, co-host of Behind the Burner, episode 3. We're really excited for this episode. Third-party portals, CMS systems, service companies. We know that this is an interesting hair-on-fire problem, but also futuristic way of thinking about how we run our businesses. So we're really excited today to welcome Matt Singer, the CEO of Ecotrak. Matt, welcome.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me today.
Absolutely. And Josh, you're a service company owner and curious, you use Ecotrak, Service Channel, Corrigo. What do you guys use in your business for third parties?
Yes, sir. I use them all. Ecotrak, Corrigo, Service Channel, the ones you mentioned, Rescue, all the ones that are out there. Some that I don't even remember. Most I don't remember because there's so many now, obviously. And I got to say, Ray, honestly, really nice job with that introduction, man. That's really good. You were like, hey, Josh, you can jump in behind me and close it up. But there was that's not even necessary. You did really, really well. I think it's important that our audience knows this.
Yeah. Well, we'll make sure that we get some likes and views to sustain that. So.
Right on. Well, hey, like Ray said, Matt, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to be able to pick your brain on this topic. I know everybody out there is super interested. Like Ray said, technology in this space is it's still a bit of a diamond in the rough thing, and it's coming to the surface, which is exciting, mostly thanks to people like you. So just happy to have you and excited to pick your brain, dude. So for those who don't know who you are, can you just kind of give us your background and tell us your story? Like where are you from? How'd you get here?
Am I?
Yeah, who are you?
Yeah,
who the hell is Matt Singer?
Great question. A little bit about myself. I started really early on in the food service space, working at ice cream shops at 15, trying to pay the bills in high school. Went into the restaurant world, mostly in operations for the first part of my career, and then spent most of my career in restaurant finance and accounting. So overseeing finance accounting teams, digging into data a lot with, data analysis, that type of thing. And then came upon Ecotrak about 5.5 years ago. 3 of our founders had this idea that they could really just change the industry with, what was out there in terms of ticketing, work order platforms. And instead of looking at facilities as a ticketing system or facility software as a ticketing system, look at it more as asset data capture, and how can we use that asset data to just really innovate facilities management. So met the founders pretty early on, took the idea, and we've just been growing ever since. So I'm really excited to bring the knowledge I have in finance, data analysis, and then pair it with great facilities professionals. So
that's awesome. Can you expand a little bit? You said ice cream shops when you were 15. When you were 15, that's awesome. We don't got to go that far back. I can probably conceptualize what you did in those ice cream shops at 15. But then you said ops and you worked your way to finance and accounting, all in the restaurant space, right?
Mm-hmm.
So help me understand what that looks like.
Started at Foster's Freeze really early on, making ice cream cones, dipping them into the chocolate, that type of thing. From there, I went to Mimi's Cafe. It's a brand, Southern California brand. They had over 250 locations at their largest. Worked there in operations, and then the founder of Mimi's Cafe, his son actually started a concept out of Southern California called Lazy Dog Restaurants. Mm-hmm. So you guys have probably heard of Lazy Dog. They've grown pretty substantially. I started there when they had 1 unit in operations, helped grow the first few units, working as managers, as a manager, general manager, that type of thing. But my passion was always finance. So finance degree, wanted to be a stockbroker. Never happened for me. I still haven't been to New York, crazily enough. So instead of that, I got talked into going into accounting. So moved into the accounting side of the business, built the accounts payable accounting team, grew Lazy Dog to over 20 units, and left there as a VP of finance and controller. So I got to work with, finance, purchasing, procurement, facilities, construction, and just really got to be a part of all the different sides of the business. And then I did a couple of years as a CFO of another restaurant group out of Southern California, Rock and Brews, a franchisee of Rock and Brews. So the band Kiss, I'm sure you guys have heard of Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. So did a couple of years there and then landed at Ecotrak. So.
And Matt, I grew up in the restaurant industry, and I've mentioned this on previous podcasts, but for all of our audience are a lot of service companies, manufacturers, but also restaurateurs and chains and facilities managers that watch this podcast. What is the biggest thing you learned working in the restaurant industry growing up?
Ooh, that is a good question. I think, knowing what I know about restaurant tours and even the service providers that support them, it really comes down to the relationship. Relationships are so important, and being able to like and trust who you work with and trust that you can count on not just your team, your internal team, but also your vendor network. I think not only did I see it there, but I'm really seeing it now with Ecotrak. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really cool. I love that. The biggest thing you learned in the restaurant space is relationships. I think that's incredibly transferable, to your point, and is just really impactful for everything that you could have possibly done. Speaking of which, I gotta know how you went from accounting, let's call it CFO, right, of this restaurant group, to software.
So, finance and accounting, you work with a lot of software, right? You've got payroll software, you've got accounting software. So I've really, I've used so many different types of software. I've had good experience, I've had really bad experiences. So I've implemented a lot of operational softwares, both in operations, but also the finance side. So when I found Ecotrak, I actually started here as a CFO, helping secure some of the funding that we got. That's really why I was brought in. My mentor found Ecotrak, thought I might be a good fit with the founders to help really incorporate the business and set it up for success. So started as a CFO, I took on the CEO role about 2.5 years ago now. And I think just, working through restaurants and growing up in the industry, you're so involved in so many parts of the business that you really set yourself up to be able to manage a business from all the different levels. So finance, accounting, HR, I've done all the different things now. So it was just a really natural fit for me. And I'm still a millennial, so I do use technology, very passionate about it. So
that's awesome.
It's been fun.
So how did the transition from CFO to CEO happen? Was that something that you were striving for? Was that something that the founders came to you and said, hey, we want you to do this, and why?
I think our board of directors saw just a natural fit. So early on, I did, finance, but then I started running our sales and marketing team. My master's degree is in marketing, so I got a little bit of creative juices behind me. My marketing director would say otherwise, but so I think the board just saw, I was able to interact in all the different parts of the business, the relationship component. I've been really fortunate to be a part of several of the associations that we work with, and getting to talk and meet people in the industry. I think my background, really suits me to be able to build relationships and ultimately, build the business, right? Getting service providers on our platform, connecting them to customers, and just trying to be that in between, and building the relationship between customers and providers. So the board saw a natural fit and asked me if I was up for it, and I thought, I've got a couple more hours in my week, I might as well. So,
and Matt, when my brother and I were first getting into the industry, we originally wanted to create kind of a restaurant equipment management platform, and we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
When you entered the space and when you joined Ecotrak, and when you saw these legacy players that have been in the industry for a long time, you see new third parties popping up every other day.
Yeah.
What was that fire in your belly that was like, wow, Ecotrak is the one I want to back? Like, that's the horse I'm backing.
That's a good question. So, growing up in finance and accounting, you do a lot with fixed asset accounting, right? And trying to analyze data around what's breaking, why are my repair costs going up so much during the summer? And, I think the data strategy that the founders had when they came up with the idea of having that asset first approach was really what motivated me. I was like, you know what? I've never been able to understand, why equipment's breaking, why does it keep breaking, right? What are we fixing? What are we not fixing? Is it the parts that are failing? Is the manufacturer not giving me, the right warranty period? I could never track a warranty. So being able to capture all the asset data up front is really what sold me on the philosophy. And it's not an easy business. There is a lot of competition. I think you guys have both alluded to it. So for me, it's really just growing as we can grow and building the relationships and hoping that people trust us to give a really good product that solves for some of the lack of technology out there that's in the marketplace today.
So what does Ecotrak solve that some of your competitors can't or don't?
Great question. I think we've seen a shift in the industry from traditional CMMS ticketing systems to really focusing on enterprise asset management. So looking at asset life cycles, looking at total cost of ownership of a piece of equipment, because it's not just, how much did I buy it for? It's how much have I spent repairing it, maintaining it? When is the life cycle up? Does it make sense for me to keep, repairing it, or is it time to replace it? So because we started with the asset and all of our software is designed that way, we're able to capture all the data, and we're now starting to use that data. We've got 5 years of data now that we can say, hey, this equipment, this manufacturer, this model is breaking because of this part. So we can start predicting failures before they happen. So it's 80% likely that it's this, or so that's what's coming, and that's how we plan to use the data. I think in terms of differentiation, that's probably at the forefront of us being a little further ahead of being able to use asset data. Other than that, we really try to make the software as easy to use as possible. I think what I learned growing up in restaurants is operations people don't like new software. They don't like hard to use software. They're trying to use so many softwares, right? I mean, I think that's a problem in the service provider world now, where you've got all these different softwares you're trying to use. If it's not easy, then you're going to fail. So what we do every day is try to simplify our processes. Our product team does a really good job just looking at what we're trying to solve for and creating the easiest solution for the end user.
Yeah. I think it was Lao Tzu that said, to gain knowledge, add; to gain wisdom, subtract.
Well said.
I want to dig into that one point. You mentioned enterprise assets, but you also use simple to use. And from my experience in the restaurant industry, the chains saw immense value in these sort of platforms. But the mom and pop shop, someone like my dad, or maybe a 1 or 2, 3 multi-unit shop that's been running for 20, 30 years, but they're just so small. They have so many different things that are going on in the business. You have a new server every other week. You have a new manager every other month. How do you deal with the turnover? And are you guys also geared towards small business facilities as well?
So it's a good question. I think probably what you've experienced is when you have, under 10 units, it's a little easier to keep your arms around everything, right? You know what equipment you have, what's working. It's easy to kind of, drive from one store to the other one, take a fryer from one store, move it over to the other one. And keeping tabs on things is a little bit easier. Once you pass that 10 to location mark, that's when it becomes harder, right? So when I talk about enterprise asset management, it's 10 plus units is really where trackability, visibility becomes hard when you don't have a software to help. In terms of where we focus, so we try to get in as early as possible. Starting sooner than later definitely helps because you start getting data sooner. So if you plan to grow, it's good to know, like, hey, the equipment I have, is it the right equipment, right? How often is it breaking? And then when you're building your new locations, you can look back at the data and say, oh, maybe I need to pick a different model, or maybe I thought this was the right refrigeration unit. I should try something different. So data is really power, right? And that's really what we're trying to achieve. So
that's awesome. So have you actually started this predictive model yet, or is that just on the horizon?
So we have built all of the modeling, and we're launching it into our platform in Q3 of this year.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool! That's so cool.
We've got some really cool things coming this year.
So I understand absolutely how this can benefit the end user. How can the service companies benefit from that same model?
So that's a great question. And again, for us, if service providers aren't happy using our software and aren't successful, we lose, right? So we want to do our best to really make the software easy for them, but also use the predictions for them too. So if we can predict what it is that is failing, whether it's a specific part, we know the manufacturer already, we can send that data to them as well. So they know, hey, it's 80% likely it's a compressor, and this is a manufacturer model number. I might as well just bring it with me if I have it, right? So we're trying to do as much as we can to give them the data as well. That's going to help them do a better job for the customer ultimately.
That's wild. So is it? So does it take all the information in from does it use problem codes, or is it looking for specific words that people put into the work order, what the unit's doing or not doing, that it compiles all this information?
Yeah, so it looks at the specific piece of equipment, the asset grouping that it's in, and the problem being reported, and said, hey, based on the 5 years of data that's included in your model, this is the likelihood that it's this, right? So you've got the top 3 likelihoods, and it could fall outside of that. But what's great about machine learning is it keeps learning over time, right? So we're continuously putting more data into the model, and it just will get better and better over time.
That's so cool. I can't wait till Q3.
Right?
Oh, that's awesome.
For you guys with service providers, this is going to be a little more of a maybe tough question. It might be easy, I don't know. But what is the biggest obstacle you've seen with growing the service provider network, and what are some feedback that you hear from the service provider side with Ecotrak?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And, we try to be as sensitive as we can to the fact that service providers aren't choosing Ecotrak, right? They're getting added to Ecotrak for the customers that we have. And we know that, right? And we appreciate their willingness to participate. I think where we can help, and where I think most of the frustration comes in, is having to, dual entry, right? So they're working in a software. Now they have to also work in our software, and, all of the competitors behind us. So what we're focused on is just being able to connect to any platform out there, so that you can have a single source of entry. And as long as we're sharing data, then ultimately it's only one input point. We have the data that our customer's happy with, and everybody wins, right? So we're right now working with several companies out there that try to aggregate the data. Repairs being one of them. I mean, I think you guys are doing a really nice job with how you are able to connect and create APIs that your customers can benefit from, which ultimately helps me help my customer. So we're really excited for just the investment we're making in open source APIs, and how we can open ourselves up to connecting to more platforms out there.
So are you able to connect to platforms that are a little bit more archaic, that run on like the SQL servers and stuff like that?
I would say that we can connect to anything with the right amount of budget, right? I think that's the good part about
it's a very political answer. Good
job. There has to be the ability of resources at the time to do it, but we are open to that. And I think for us, the mom and pop service provider is so important to our customer success that it really does make sense for us to open it up for them, but also for the larger players out there. So,
I always bring back this analogy when I was growing up in my dad's restaurants, and I still work in the restaurants today. There was the on-demand delivery kind of boom that came about, and my dad, we would have 6 different tablets, next to our POS system, DoorDash, Uber Eats, all these different platforms, and we'd have to dual entry everything. And then there was this platform called Ordermark that came out that actually took all of those third-party portals and delivery platforms and integrated it right into one single system of our POS. And so for all the service providers and restaurateurs watching this podcast, that's very, very similar to what service providers experience on the supply side.
That's a great analogy. And I can share that I went through something very similar. I was programming a lot of those iPads, right? All the pricing, all the menu items. So, it was definitely a headache. So I understand, what our service providers are going through, and I'm very empathetic to it. And, we're trying to come up with creative ways that we can help eliminate, that same hurdle. And I think we'll see this year, I think in the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to see a lot more openness to connectivity. I think, people are sometimes hesitant to open themselves up to collecting data, sharing data. We're trying to just be really open and do our best to say, hey, we're ready to connect. We're willing to connect. We want to make it easier. So I think you'll see a trend towards, more openness.
Josh, how long have you guys used Ecotrak?
Oh boy, for quite a while, I think at least a couple of years. I mean, since you guys were pretty small, I think. But yeah, I mean, and so far it's been great. You know what I like, and this is always the mark of a good platform or good software to me is how often I receive updates, right? And the quality of those updates. I'm a changelog freak. Like I love to look at changelogs and be like, oh, what's different now? And that's the thing I've noticed about Ecotrak is they're always evolving, and I think that's good and it's important, especially in this day and age. And so yeah. And one of the things I want to touch on, we were talking about it a little bit earlier, before we hit that record button. But I think it's important that our audience hears this. So I'm curious, Matt, you can answer the same way that you did before. Is there a feature in Ecotrak where the end user can rate the service provider?
Great question. And, growing up in restaurants, I dealt with Yelp and, I always had those awful scores coming through. I'm like, what the heck, guys? It doesn't make any sense. So, we have held off. We are trying not to allow for subjectivity. We're really focused on objectivity. So what are fair metrics that we can use to rate the service provider's performance? And can we incorporate similar metrics with the customer's ability or interactivity with the service provider as well? So if you're a service provider looking to accept new business, we can tell you the customer cancels work orders X amount of the time, or, because that also, is hard for you to manage on the service provider side. So we want to open it up and not just provide metrics that are one-sided. We want to create objective metrics that both sides can benefit from.
Right. I'm really happy to hear you say that. And I think a lot of service companies out there will be too. And I say that with the utmost respect, to both you and customers out there. Listen, there's a reason why we do what we do, right? It's because the people who don't do it don't usually understand it.
Right.
And so, when you leave that subjectivity up to them, when there's an intermittent problem per se, and we need to see the unit fail as a service provider and we can't, some people will mark that as unsatisfactory because they just don't have a full understanding of what it means. And so, us as the service providers, man, we got a lot of pride in what we do. You know what I mean? And so we're looking at that and we're like, shoot, how do we get them to understand? Because one thing technology, I shouldn't say that it does. I don't want to make a blanket statement here, but let's be realistic. It is a lot of it takes an element of personability out of it, right? Because you're not on the phone anymore. You're not talking to somebody. You're not face to face. You're not, in front of them. So I guess that kind of leads to a good question for you. You said that the biggest thing that you learned in the restaurant industry was the value of relationships. How does Ecotrak help to keep the relationship intact between the provider and the end user?
By not allowing subjectivity. No.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Perfect. Mic drop.
No, I think it's a great question. I think creating easy ways to communicate, I think, is number one, right? So having the ability to send notes to the right people, and people are nowadays using so many different types of not just software but technologies to communicate. So how can we open ourselves up to all the different ways people receive and like to communicate? And then how can we just highlight or notify people, at the right time, so it's not overwhelming and there's no frustration created. So we're trying to help facilitate the relationship by using technology and really incorporating communication into how we build it.
That's key. Relationships on both sides. And Josh, I want to ask you a question on when you started feeling, I don't know if pressure is the right word for it, but when you started really realizing that third parties was taking off, with your business growing. When did you see that mark?
November 23rd, 2017 at about 11:16 a.m.
Man.
Remembers the exact time.
Oh, you know what? Honestly, it was somewhere around 2016, 2017. Service Channel was the first one, that we started using. And I'm going to be honest with you. I had no idea what it was, right? And so they just asked me to join this platform. And what the hell is this? What is it? It's asking me for all this information. Why do I have to do this? Oh, wait, I have to do everything twice now. I have to do it here and I have to do it here. This is BS, man. That was my initial thought. And I think I can probably speak for every service company out there. When they initially were introduced to these platforms, that's probably exactly what most of them were thinking, 99.97 of them. And then you come to realize that, they can actually be a tool, right, to be used. And so it as the new platforms followed, right, there was, Corrigo is kind of back there with Service Channel too, but they didn't really come onto the scene with Corrigo Pro and all that kind of stuff until after Service Channel. So each one got easier and easier because you kind of understood, the purpose and the reason behind it. But yeah, and the biggest thing is like, here's the pain point, right? Is as we started adding all these different providers, service companies are thinking, well, how am I going to cover the admin involved in all this dual entry and all this online communicating, right? This typing, this procedural changes, right? IVR, check-ins, checkouts. And there's a lot that goes into a lot of these platforms. And then when you add platform on top of platform on top of platform, so now what was one procedure for a customer at one point in time, now you have your procedure and then 8 or 9 other procedures that you have to do because it varies just a little bit per platform, right? And so, these are the things that go through service companies' minds, when they're introduced to stuff like this. I don't know if that's an adequate answer to your question or not. I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole down memory lane there.
Trauma.
I'm back now.
I think it's a good point though, is, each of the CMMS softwares out there, they're all a little bit different. So you have to have procedures for each one. And that's why I mentioned earlier, like really finding a way to create cohesiveness and create that connectivity, similar to what happened, with the on-demand delivery platforms, is there's going to be a consolidation, and, companies are going to be more and more willing to open up, their APIs to receiving data. And, I know that IVR is a thing, but we've got really good geolocation technology nowadays. Can you just pass me geo coordinates when they are on site, right? Like, I think there's ways you can kind of, sunset old software and add really cool new technology to solve for some of the issues out there.
Yeah, I agree.
We mentioned the admin side of things, Josh or Matt. From your experience, technicians in the field, what is some feedback you've heard from technicians, on the ground floor, dealing.
We're both gonna laugh at this question, man. I know exactly what Matt's gonna say. I'll go first. So I'm gonna tell you right now, it's real simple, right? Technicians, they want to fix equipment. They just want to fix stuff, man. Mm-hmm. And it's at the end of the day, that's what they want. They don't want the AVRs. They don't want the dual entries. They don't even want to type their notes. They just want to be able to fix the equipment, shake somebody's hand, hear that person say, thank you so much, and then go on to the next job. And so the frustration grows as the platforms do. And I don't know that that's necessarily going to change, although with the next generations, it's just going to be more expected.
Yeah. I would say, we just launched a new app that, we worked with a lot of technicians to try to get their feedback. And I think to Josh's point, they really don't care about technology. They care about being able to do their job and do it well, So I think, where software companies win is by giving them that option and alleviating their need to maybe use the app even. We've got some really cool things we're working on that, maybe takes away their need to have our mobile app. Maybe they can just respond to a text message and click a button to tell us where they are, right? And it's something that they're used to doing in their personal life, so it's not as intrusive of them having 10 different mobile apps on their phone. So I would say as much as you can simplify or remove their need to work in technology and just give them the path to success, that's where you find the win.
And it goes back to that connectivity that you were talking about, Matt, because ideally what the technicians want is they want one app, right? And that app has to be the one that the company uses, right? It can't be one of these third-party apps, because then that won't communicate the way that it needs to back to the main umbrella organization that they work for. So, what at the end of the day, what they want is they want to be able to go into whatever software the company they're working for uses, and do all their notes, take all their pictures, upload all their stuff right there, and then it shoots to where it needs. They just want to wash their hands with it. And hey, to be frank, I mean, that's probably what we all want.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Like, we want to work with all those softwares that they're using and say, give me all that data. They're already inputting it. Why have them do it twice? So I think you're spot on there. And I think that's what we're going to see more of in the next 12 to 18 months, is definitely that openness and connectivity.
It's been fun to see Ecotraks growth, and Matt, you're the CEO of the company. You're in charge of also making sure the company is well capitalized to grow. And I asked you earlier, what was kind of the biggest thing you learned on the restaurant side, but as you've dug into the software for both sides of the equation, what has been like the most rewarding and biggest learnings on the service side to make that relationship work?
That great question. I would say, I unfortunately lost my hair before Ecotraks, so this is not a reflective of the growth that we've experienced over the last 5 years. But I would say that learning technology and seeing the benefits that we can drive within the relationship for the service provider and the customer, that's really what helps me sleep at night and makes me feel warm and fuzzy. Is I can make changes into how every customer, and we've got 13,000 locations on our platform now, and that's a lot of users. I think we have 40 or 50,000 users on the platform now. So I can make a small change that can have such a large impact to so many people and how they interact, with the customer and service provider relationship during the day. So that's what I've learned. I spend a lot of my day, obviously, doing stuff like this, which is so much fun, out in the trade shows, talking to people, capitalizing the business. I do a lot there, but my favorite time is spent with the product team, really digging in and understanding, what are we doing? Is it the right thing? Is there another way we can look at, how the product works to really simplify? So I always call myself our solutions architect. I think I'm always trying to find a solution for something. So that's really what I've loved so much about the last 5 years in learning technology and software.
That's really cool. Solutions architect. I like that. I've got a quick question. I don't know if it's backpedaling or not necessarily, but it's just kind of an overarching question. I think some people out there, are probably in a very similar position as you, right? Position of leadership, but maybe their background isn't in exactly, what they're leading. Like, your background is not in software, right? You're not a developer. You're not, you didn't go to school for that or anything. So what kind of advice do you have for somebody who's kind of in your shoes, that is expected to be a leader of an organization that specializes in something they don't have a background in?
That is a really good question. And that was probably my biggest fear when I took on the CEO role. Finance I can do with my hands tied behind my back, right? It's not something I have to think that much about. So what I've learned is it really comes down to finding the right people to support you, right? I've got an excellent chief technology officer that doesn't talk a lot, but when he does, it just makes so much sense, right? So I don't even have to worry about it. I know he's doing everything that needs to happen on the technology side. I've got my head of strategy that's always opening my eyes to what's happening in the industry, and it's kind of pushes me outside my comfort zone. I've got an awesome sales and marketing team. My customer success team is they're making sure the customer and the service providers are all happy using the software. And our product team is just awesome. So I'd say, for anyone moving into the role or coming into a role where they're leading an organization where maybe it's not their background, just find good people and, put all your effort into making them better. So
love that. That's great advice. Dropped the mic a couple times on this podcast. Good job, man. That's awesome. All right. So what's in the future for for Ecotrak? What are you working on? What do you anticipate? What's your grand vision? Obviously, you can't divulge everything, but I'm so curious. Like somebody like you who's leading a company like this into the future of an industry that desperately needs it. Like, what's next?
So, great question. I think we're seeing new technologies come out every day. I'm sure you guys have seen the ChatGPT. We were using their OpenAI AI platform ahead of that, just really interpreting data, utilizing data. I don't think we've even scratched the surface in terms of what AI looks like and how it's going to change the industry. So a lot of new tech that's really meant to simplify, but also enhance how we use data. I think that's really what our focus is. So I talked about some predictive modeling that we're doing, some predictive analytics. That's kind of what you can expect from us over the next 6 months, is really leaning into data and how we use it, how we interpret it, and how we display it to the customer and service provider on our platform. And then past that, I think it's introducing new technologies, creating connectivity where we bring in sensor data, create that really cohesiveness of IoT, where you've got sensor data, you can create some automation from it. It learns from its behavior. So I think that's really what our focus is over the next 12 to 18 months.
If someone can aggregate all of the IoT platforms into one,
I mean, it comes down to connectivity at the same time. It's like, hey, they've all got data, like share it with me. If I can bring it in and learn from it, and as long as it's in a format I can accept, like, why wouldn't I? And I think that's what we're going to see more and more companies do, is just open themselves up and being more open-minded to sharing data. And at the end of the day, it's no good if people can't use it, right? And you can't use data if it's in 10 different places. So I think where we look to win is just really being that aggregator and that open platform that can be that tool that gives you all the data and learns from it and creates automation and simplicity from it. So,
well, what I can say, Matt, is starting as a dishwasher as soon as I could walk. Thank you for what you've done for the restaurant industry, and thank you, for facilities managers and for equipment. Your type of platform is desperately needed, for these organizations. So thanks for pushing the industry forward, with technology.
Yeah, thank you guys. This has been a lot of fun. I love getting to hang out with you guys, but also this has been a fun podcast. So appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing all the fun podcasts to come that you guys come up with.
Absolutely, man. And I'm looking forward to the next party you sponsor.
Yeah. We always throw the best parties.
Let me get in on that next time.
Throw the best party.
let me get in on that next time, man.
Right?
Let's go. Let's do it together.
Let's do it.
All right, cool. Well, hey, Matt, I really do. Ray and I think I speak for Ray when I say thank you so much for the time you spent with us today. I know it was extremely valuable just for me, and I know it'll be valuable for our audience too. And the intent is for the entire industry as a whole. So thanks again for that, for your time, for what you do. And anything else?
Awesome. I appreciate your guys' time. This has been a lot of fun. And thank you to all the subscribers out there listening to the podcast. Love the industry, love what we do, and love to be part of it. So
where can they find you, Matt, if they want to learn some more information about you and Ecotrak?
That is a great question. I'm at shows every week. So typically, I was just at the Connect show as a RIFMA a few weeks back. My email, msinger@ecotrak.com. That's probably the easiest way. I monitor it pretty frequently. I'm all over it. So yeah, feel free to reach out. I love hearing feedback, good, bad, the ugly. It just makes us better. So always open to it. And yeah, love the chance to share that.
Well, with our audience, you're going to start getting spammed. So you just
ready. Bring it on, guys. Bring it on.
Awesome.
Cool. That's all we got. Yeah. What do you think, Josh?
No, that was great, man. Thank you. Thank you again so much. And until next time.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Stay hopping.
Stay hopping.
Stay hopping.